Welcome back to Watching Film with me, Seth Varnadore. I'm joined again by a very special guest, Riley Reed. Riley, how you doing tonight?
Doing great, doing great. Just getting ready for
So,
spring ball.
yeah, you got a couple weeks till you guys start up. Florida's game is on Thursday. We're recording this on a Tuesday, so a few days from now. We both went to the Florida Coaches Clinic, the Chalk Talk, and got to watch practice. You've actually gotten to watch practice a few times this year. So I
Mhm.
wanted to bring you on and talk to you kind of about how Florida practices under Billy Napier. What just kind of what are your general impressions of kind of the you've been a couple times now or two or three times?
Yeah, I've been to four
Okay,
practices.
Florida.
Yeah, so I went to like three in a row there, and I think it was the third and fourth week that they were going. So yeah, four total.
Okay, so what's kind of your? I've heard, and then I got to see one. My just kind of first impressions were how, efficient is one word you kept hearing a lot of people say, and then like
Mhm.
the tempo, it just kept there was no stopping. What were your kind of general impressions of practice and in the time you got to see it?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, they've got so many coaches there, and you can tell that their practices. They're super organized, efficient. Like you said, there's not a lot of downtime. I mean, they get in and out of like their periods really quick, and it seems like they're always getting coached. Like even if they go to like a 3 minute special teams period, like if they're doing a cover or return period, like I was down there with the defensive line when they were doing a 3 minute cover return period, and they were working like their ET games and that type of stuff. And there's really no downtime. You know, the other thing is that you can tell it's a lot of like fundamental approach right now. They're really kind of it doesn't seem like right now the emphasis is on scheme. It seems like it's blocking, beating blocks, and tackling, and that type of stuff, which I think is like our mentality, like where I coach too. Like that's what spring's about. For us, spring's about um, identifying who's your personnel, like what's their ability, and building your fundamentals, and honestly building an attitude of being physical and playing hard and that type of stuff. And then because then you've got the summer and you've got fall camp where you can really get into um, your scheme and stuff. That's not to say you don't practice on your scheme during spring, but I think you could see what was being emphasized there was fundamentals and just doing. I thought I was really impressed. Just how efficient it was and how much coaching was going on.
Yeah, like you said. So as soon as I was kind of watched more of the offense while I was
Mhm.
there. So while they're doing the special team stuff, the quarterbacks are coming down. They're throwing. They're working
Yeah.
on different kind of throws, and they have. I got to hear Coach O'Hara talk about he wasn't given a lot of instruction at practice because he can't, but I got to hear him kind of talk about how they lay out their individual and different drills and stuff. So they were working those while that return period is going on. You said defensive lines down there.
Hmm.
It looked like defensively they did a couple circuits as well. So
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
is that something they did every day you were there, or is that something that was just kind of on
Yeah.
the select days?
Yeah. So it kind of seemed like the way that they started. Um, they would start like their pre-practice, so before they get into stretch and everything, and we do something similar. We call it fastball. Um, but basically, what it is like for the defense, it's them. Like you got a scout team that has cards and it has like the formation on it, and they go and they get lined up to that formation, and there's a call, and they're going to run through their call. Now the offense isn't really moving, so it's basically, hey, it's this formation, there's this motion, and this is the call, play it out. So you can get a lot of reps really fast in that, and you can do it pre-practice because you can kind of do it at 75%, and there's no banging or anything like that. um, but then towards like the middle of practice each day, they were either doing like some type of like a tackle circuit or a block destruction circuit, or like a takeaway circuit. So again, it's like that. Hey, we're going to try to get just rapid fire reps in a 15-minute period. There's like 5 stations, I think, and they just kind of rotated through them. And like while they were doing that, like the offense, they were over on the other field, and they were doing like ball security drills, and like the big guys were like the offensive line. They were doing like a walkthrough, that type of thing for, whatever blocking schemes they had that day.
Yeah, they were doing something similar. When I was there, they were doing something similar on the offense. They had like looked like a ball security circuit, a few different drills for the guys to go through while the defense was working their circuits on the other side. Yeah. Another thing I saw, it seemed like they go, they don't do a ton of reps at once, but they seem to go like a lot of team, like good on good for, it seemed like maybe 3 to 4 plays for first and second team, go get what you get off the field. Is that something they did on other days as well?
Yeah, and it kind of seemed, and like at that level, the majority of practices that I've seen in the spring, and just honestly, the majority of practices, it always kind of seems like it's broken up into like you're going to get an indie period, and just from a defensive perspective to kind of give you an idea of it, it's like, hey, we're going to get 7 minutes in this indie period, and like say I'm the defensive line coach, I'm going to work on our block destruction, and then you go to inside run, and then you might come back and you get another 7-minute indie period, and in that period, hey, we're going to work on like our pass rush and our games and any of our line movements that we have for like third down calls. We're going to work that stuff. And then they might go to like, another team period, but it's more like, team scaling, that type of thing. And then, if there's any other indie they have to do, they might get one more period, and then they go to like an actual team period where they're mixing run and pass and they're moving the ball. And like you were saying, like at that point, it was basically there was 2 groups that were going on one field. So the 1s and 2s were going on one field, and it was like 4 reps, and then they got off, and the 2s came on and got 4 reps. And then the first team came on and got 4 reps, and the second team came on and got 4 reps. And the third team was outside, and I think they were doing like sets of 5. So it was like they got 5, and then they took a little break, and then they went back and got 5.
So, yeah, I think they did something similar when they went to 7-on-7 too, because you had the third team guys working it on the other end of the field, and the first and second team guys working on one end of the field. So everybody's getting reps, everybody's getting better. Is that something that kind of staggering it with, because this is something I heard McElwain did. He was kind of the first guy I heard did practice in that way, where they'd work kind of a run emphasis and then go inside run, work a pass emphasis, then go to pass. Yeah. Is that a Saban thing?
Yeah, it might be, and honestly, like when I think about it, is like the places that I've been, and the places that I've like seen practice, and it seems like that's pretty typical. But I think it's like a lot of those places I've been to and watched practice, they're like Saban guys, So like when we go to Georgia, like they're really similar to that. Well, obviously, Kirby has a lot of influence from, the way that Saban did his stuff. And, Napier, he's a Saban guy. Now, he wasn't with him for a long time, but obviously, they're long enough.
And he was with McElwain at Colorado State as well. And that's what McElwain was the first guy I heard did that. I think my brother, when he was coaching, went to McElwain's. They did a similar thing where you can come watch practice during the spring, and he told me that's how they structured it. And I always thought that was really smart.
Yeah.
Other thing I heard, I don't know if you were at any practices under the previous staff. I heard about 5 minutes into practice, I was talking to a coach that was a state champion a couple of different times in the state of Florida, pretty well regarded. He's like, this is a lot more intense already. Like, he's like, after 5 minutes, he's like, the intensity is much higher already than it was with the last staff. Like, that was something that was noticeable right away. Is that something you saw as well?
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think you kind of saw it not necessarily maybe in that first or second year, but I think you saw it on defense in the third and fourth year. It seemed like the physicality, it seemed like it fell off a little bit on defense. Like guys weren't running to the ball. And I think a lot of that is an attitude thing. And I think that can kind of go back to, the intensity of, like, you want your practices to be hard. You want them to be like game-like scenarios. And if it's flat, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get the competition that you need.
No.
Because ultimately competition is what pushes your players to be the best they can be. And it builds depth. And in the SEC, I've always said, like, that's the difference in, like, the top level SEC programs is their depth. Where, their ones are probably a little bit better. But when you look at the top 5-6 teams in that league, their first group, they're all really good football players. They're NFL guys. I think the depth is the big difference. So when you can go out and compete and you have high intensity practices and people are locked in, I think that's where you start, people are getting pushed and they're pushing for jobs, and you build that depth, which is important in that league.
And everybody's getting reps, everybody's getting coached.
Yeah.
All, those third team guys that may have been sitting around with their thumbs up their butt last year or out there doing stuff, they have a chance to move up the depth chart. So that's
a big part of that is just the number of coaches that they have.
Yeah.
If you don't have, 30 guys on the field that are working in there, you probably can't be running 2 or 3 groups at the same time. So.
And that's something that when I went and heard O'Hara talk, quarterback analyst, afterwards when they broke up, and he was talking about how important he thought it was and how important the staff thought it was to start out with really high intensity at the beginning of practice. He's like, we may come down to here, but let's start here. And if we come down to here, that's okay. Don't start here and then come down. Right? He's like, it's not going to happen. So that's something I think that they're being told, hey, we need to start with really high intensity. I thought all the coaches brought energy, but it wasn't like it didn't seem fake, and it wasn't over. It was just like these guys were happy to be there doing their job and like getting on guys, but not in a fake way. It didn't seem like. So Matt Rule was there on the day I was there, and we got to hear him talk a little bit. I thought his speech after practice was really, really good.
I liked it. I was a fan of it. And it was what I liked about it was genuine. And he kind of called the team out. Yeah,
I was thinking like how. So he came up after practice and talked to the team and told them how they were really talented. Matt Rule's now an NFL head coach, so his word carries some weight with these guys, I'm sure. Talked about how talented they were, and then talked about said he always likes to go and see the teams he's going to talk to. What did they have last year? What was their deal? And he said that what can really kill you, what can really keep you from winning, is not knowing why you're losing. And he basically called out the team and said, hey, you guys were 121st in penalties last year. And you saw some eyes kind of open a little bit when he said that, because they thought he was just going to be giving them a bunch of attaboys.
Yeah.
And so he came in with that and was pretty strong. And then he went on to say, he's like, how did you only force 13 turnovers at the University of Florida? And he kept saying at the University of Florida. Yeah. So I thought, and then he talked the other side about giving the ball away. So I thought his speech after practice was great. And if you're Napier, you got to be just overjoyed when you hear him kind of go into that.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought I was a fan of that speech, and pretty cool that when you have that, a guy like that'll come in and just kind of keep it real with you, and give you some feedback that you can actually really use.
And he probably came in and reinforced the message they've been pushing all spring too, after being there for a day. So I'm sure that kind of helped.
And I'm sure there was some conversation between him and Napier, and Coach Napier's probably like, hey, if you get a chance,
1-2-1,
maybe give him a bone, but then say, hey, y'all still aren't that good. Yeah. You got a long way to go. So
yeah, no, he was. I thought that was great. Now you've been to, like you mentioned earlier, you've been to practice kind of at a bunch of different big time schools. I
yeah,
know you recently went to FSU.
we did.
You've been to Georgia. You've been to a few other schools. How did
Yeah.
Florida's practice compare? How did maybe the structure and then kind of the intensity and efficiency? How did that kind of compare to other
Yeah.
places you've been?
It was funny, and we were talking about this off air, but one of our coaches here at Union County, when we went there earlier to Florida, he kind of like walked in and he looked at me and he's like these guys look small, and I kind of looked at him. I said, hey, these guys aren't small. I'm like, these guys are big. I was here when they were small, and then last week we were at Florida State, and we walked in there and he kind of came up about 2 or 3 minutes later, and he's like, you were right. He's like, these guys are small. So I think at Florida State they've got their work cut out for them. They've still got a handful of guys where you're like, that guy looks good, but it's overall it's not the team that you would like if you put them out there and they wore white helmets, white jerseys, and white pants, and they were just on a practice field in the middle of Micanopy, you wouldn't say, hey, that's Florida State. That's not what a Florida State team should look like. They and their practices were, structured honestly very similar to Florida's. Probably not quite as efficient. I think a lot of that has to do with the amount of coaches. There's not as many coaches at Florida State. The sense of urgency, it didn't seem like there was the same sense of urgency at Florida State either. Like about 30 minutes into it, one of the coaches on our staff, he walked up and he said, it feels different. He's like, it does, like it's not as high of a level of intensity, like the energy around it doesn't seem the same. It didn't seem like they were as efficient getting in and out of their periods. A lot more downtime, not as much coaching going on. It wasn't a bad practice.
Yeah.
I think they still accomplished a lot. I've seen a lot better.
Yeah. I saw Napier yell at the quarterbacks because they left when there's 2 seconds left in the period to start running towards the middle for stretch. He's like, no, it's not over, and sent him back. They waited 3 seconds, it blew, and then they went. Like that guy was not really messing around on the timing of anything.
Yeah.
So you've been to Georgia. How does it compare to kind of the intensity there?
Georgia's a different animal.
Yeah.
And it's funny. So we went to it would have been 2019 is when we did that trip. We went to a spring practice at Florida. And this was when we were in Ocala. We were at Trinity. And so we left. We went to the spring practice on Florida, but we were on our way to a coaching clinic at Auburn. And so we got to the coaching clinic at Auburn, and that night they had like the coaching social where they had like at that time it was still Coach Malzahn. He went up and he was giving a speech while everyone was eating. The food was phenomenal. They had like 4 horse troughs of crawfish. I think our table ate about like 38 plates of crawfish combined. So shout out to Coach Thomas, Coach Chewy, and Coach Lane. I think there was 4 of us, and we put down probably about like 8 or 9 plates each. But then they had like their breakout sessions with it was similar, they were in the basketball arena, similar to Florida's. And then we got to go to practice the next day. So they practiced. It was an early practice. And we got out there, and we were at Florida, and we were like, they don't really look like in like a top level SEC program should probably look. We go to Auburn, we're like, these dudes look good. And then so we're leaving the clinic. Well, one of our players, he had just been at UAB and then was at Auburn, and he was over at Georgia. And so he was doing a visit at Georgia. He was getting a tour, and his dad was there with him. and his dad was on our staff. Real cool guy, still over there in Ocala, and he calls us and he said, "Hey, do you guys want to come to Georgia's practice today?" Or maybe it was tomorrow. I can't remember. Yeah. But so anyways, we're like, yeah, we're coming. So we leave Auburn and we go over to Georgia. And so we're talking about like how Auburn looks, their guys look better than Florida. And then we get to Georgia and we're like, where were these creatures like created? and it, you got, like I'm a big Florida fan. So like I have Florida bias, but like you get out there and you watch, so I don't like Georgia, but you get out there and you watch them practice, and it's freaking impressive. It's like robotic, and you've got Kirby's got his microphone that's in all the speakers, and he's like coach. I mean, we left Florida and Auburn, and the head coaches there weren't coaching like how he was coaching. You can still like that guy at heart, he's still like a position coach. He's like, I want to be in there with DBs. Like I want to be coaching DBs. Yeah. And so he's down in there, and I mean they got after it. I think honestly it might have been like one of their first day of pads. I mean they came out and like for 30 minutes they just ran into each other. Like they went from like board drills into like 2-on-2 combo drill into like 3-on-3 combo drill into like a goal line like fit period into like a goal line touchdown tackle period straight into like a bubble period where it was like a full contact perimeter bubble period. And that was like the first 35 minutes of practice. I was like, yeah, I'm like, I like this.
That's those defensive coaches love that stuff.
And you can tell, I mean, like those guys that were there now, I mean, you understand why they got the best players and they're super organized, they're coached hard, they're coached well. I mean, so me, like Trayvon Walker is probably going to be the first pick, and to me, he's the best player in the country. Like that's what happens when you recruit the best players, and then you go in there and develop them, and that's everyone's plan. Yeah. But the mentality and the organization and the attention to detail, I think it all has to be there for it to happen.
So, how much closer is this Florida, what you've seen this spring, than what you saw in the past at Florida? How much closer is it to that level?
I've seen really good practices at Florida under the last staff.
Yeah.
So I think it's never like sometimes you get a sense of like comfort, and I think that's where like people say you grow outside your comfort zone, and if you feel comfortable and you feel like you're getting in this age where hey we're pretty good, and that's when things like go bad. Hey, we're good. You start letting
these guys have been there before. I can trust them to do it.
Yeah. So I don't I'm not in the program, so I don't want to say anything about like what was going on with the last staff because I'm not there. But something changed, and I think it was obvious. But I've seen good practices there from the last staff.
Okay, so it wasn't a consistent.
Yeah, it like Florida's practice. It wasn't anything like earth shattering. I thought it was a really good practice, and all four of them I were at, they were pretty consistently similar.
Yeah,
seemed like the effort was high, the intensity was high, fast paced, efficient, organized. But at that level, like that's what it should be.
Yeah,
like you everyone on your staff that's a position coach is making $500,000 or whatever.
Yeah, they should have some energy.
Yeah, like coaching football is your job. You should be good at it.
Yeah, it's all right to have a little energy getting paid $500,000.
Yeah, exactly. That's all right. Yeah.
So, not necessarily naming names, but what did you think about Florida's personnel? Kind of seeing guys up close.
Yeah,
I know you feel like defensively they've got a chance to be pretty good this year with what they got. And do you think they have the depth, or is it kind of have to be pretty healthy?
I think that might be the difference. I think there's depth at certain positions.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think there's good depth at linebacker, and I might be against the grain there because I know a lot of people have been kind of questionable of where they're at linebacker. I think Ventrell Miller is obviously really good. The defense changed when Ventrell wasn't there.
Yeah. And the day I was there, he was not at practice, so I got to see some of the younger guys, and I thought they played pretty well for the most part.
I'm a big Jeremiah Scooby Williams fan. I think he's gonna be. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him come out there and be a starting linebacker like week one, if not week one, real early.
Yeah, he looked pretty impressive. Good. I think Wingo looks the part too.
Yeah, I think Wingo gives you some stuff there. He's a really good athlete. It seemed like when they got into team, DeJuan Black he was making some plays and he was flashing in certain areas. But it seemed like when they were going through like their group and their individual periods, that sometimes he struggled. But he's a younger guy, and I think he was there last year. So really, it might even be his first spring going through practice. So, there's going to be growing pains there.
And I think he'd always been, I think in high school and
JUCO, I don't think he's ever played in a box like that.
No, I think he's a safety and a star previously. So,
and so, like Chop, he used to always say, this was a Chop saying, he'd say, Reed, he said, I don't make linebackers, God makes linebackers. And so it's like it's one of those things that it's such an instinctive position. It's like sometimes you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we're at Florida State and they've got I won't say his name, but they've got a kid there that looks just phenomenal. And then we were sitting in there in their staff meeting after, and they're like so disappointed because he's never in the right place.
Yeah.
It's such an instinctive position where it's hard to teach instincts,
Yeah, I coached with at Tusculum. Jerry Odom was the head coach, played linebacker at Florida, and he says it's like he calls it like the blender. He's like, you've got a lot going on, and it's like you either got that instinct or you don't. So that's why when Florida previously kept recruiting non-linebackers and tried to turn them into linebackers, I think it was a tough sell.
Yeah, it's like you recruiting safeties, and it's because everyone they're trying to get these guys like Nakobe Dean and like the guys that can run. Well, it's like the difference was Nakobe Dean's high school tape, he's playing linebacker.
Yes.
And like you can see him pulling the trigger and making the read. So like you can check that box.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to go the other way.
So they did, but they had a good practice when we were there. So maybe guys, the guys we mentioned, they played linebacker in high school. So that's helpful, I think. I thought
they've got the young kid coming in too from Mobile,
from Alabama. Yeah,
that's like a really high. I can't think of his name, but a really highly recruited and highly rated kid. So, I think there's some depth there. So maybe I'm against the grain there.
I saw a story. I know you got to see Bateman talk this week, but they told Bateman they thought he had one of the better rooms on campus. So I think they might be of a similar persuasion, but there's some
we didn't even mention Amari Burney. I mean, Amari Burney's flash there. Again, he's one of those safety guys that they moved down, but he's a bigger guy. I think it's instincts, and it's a lot of it too is a willingness to go play the run. Like the best linebacker I've ever coached, we coached him this year. He's undersized, but he was just like he would stick his face in anything. Like just not scared. I mean, he played last year in the playoffs on a torn ACL. Like that's the type of kid he was, you know. And I think like linebackers, they got to be a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Because you're going to go take on 320-pound guards and stuff all day, and you just have to like enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like those people are hard to find.
Yeah.
You know.
And then I spent more time on the offensive side of the ball. I thought they had they have a really good group of running backs.
Yeah, I agree.
They got 2 or 3. They got 3 that I think can play right now.
Yeah,
the kid from Louisiana busted like 3 or 4 long runs.
Yeah.
Bowman is really, I mean, he kind of hides in there a little bit, and then he'll just squirt out. Yeah. And Lingard has got some straight ahead. He's a straight line guy, but he's got
track kid.
He's got some wheels. So I think they got a good group there. At receiver, I think they're a little. Yeah, go ahead.
I was standing on the sideline when the running back transfer from UL walked by. I was like, who's that? And then like he got by, and I saw I can't think of his name right now.
It's Johnson, right? Montreal Johnson.
Montreal Johnson. Yeah. I saw him walk, and I was like, that's that run. He's a big dude.
Yeah.
Like I think he's listed at maybe like 6 foot 190. He's every bit of 190.
Yeah.
Like he's stout. Yeah, and he's only freshman. You know?
He broke a couple big ones in scrimmage. There was that day. It seemed like it was the kind of a boom or bust for the offense, but they hit a couple big pass plays as well. I thought the receivers. Yeah. I don't think there's a ton of depth, but I think they've got some guys at the top.
I think there's some good players in that room. I don't think there's a lot of diversity in that.
There's no wiggle.
It seems like I think Jaquavian Frazier has the potential to be really good. I think Shorter is really good at some things. I think the Burke kid, I think he's got potential to be pretty good. And the Xavier Henry, I mean, we played against Marcus Burke when he was a junior at Trinity Christian, and he scored all 3 touchdowns that we gave up against us. He scored one on a punt return. He scored one on a bomb, and he scored one on just a quick ball that he just wiggled. I mean, I think there's some potential there.
Yeah.
But there's not. It's like you look and you're like, well, who's going to play in the slot?
Yeah. I think that's what they're searching for right now.
And I think where you look at the way the game is now, slots are so important because you have to be able to control the seventh fitter in the run game with RPO stuff. And it's if you can just go out there and play man free and they can play the nickel and win that matchup, I think it eliminates now they can just play 8-man run fits and it's tough on you.
Well, that's why I wrote that last year. That's why I thought Richardson might be a better fit last year because he could fit the ball in tighter spaces. There was not a lot of separation being had last year, I didn't think.
Yeah.
I've heard from people that were I've heard from some Thomas Goldcamp is a writer for 24/7. He said Whittemore would get open a lot, but you couldn't really see that on TV. Okay. That he would get missed. But when you were looking on separation for stuff, there wasn't a ton there. Yeah. So I thought Richardson with his stronger arm could really fit it in tighter windows. Yeah. But
you look at the receivers too that are dominating college football right now. That's those are the kind of guys that they are. They're guys that they've got some wiggle. They're not these big guys when you maybe saw Julio Jones and AJ Green and those. They're guys that can run routes. You're talking about
Smith is 180 pounds. Maybe
Devontae Smiths, your Jamar Chases, Justin Jeffersons, your Jamison Williams, those guys where they're route runners and DBs are so good now, and it's you've got to be able to go and create separation. I think it's just you can't expect hey, we're just going to throw up these jump balls. Well,
no,
DBs are all 6'1", 6'2", 205 pounds now. They're different type of creatures.
And it's interesting. I think that Mullen had a lot of when at Florida they had kind of the whole variety. They had you had your Percy Harvins, you had bigger guys outside.
Yeah,
he had a lot of success in Mississippi State with some bigger receivers out there.
Yeah,
that didn't run real well when they got to the NFL Combine, but so I feel like maybe he kind of fell into that. Hey, I like having these big guys outside because it seemed to be what they're recruiting, but.
Yep.
Like you said, you got to have a variety. I heard you got to have a basketball team. You want a point guard, you want a power forward, you want different bodies. So
yeah, well, it's you looked at when they were really good in 20, you had Trayvon Grimes, who's a really good vertical threat. You had Kyle Pitts, who was just a matchup nightmare, and then you had Kadarius Toney, and so 3 pretty different guys.
They could all win 1-on-1 too.
And that was the thing. It was okay, so what are you going to do? You're going to double KT and we're going to destroy you with Kyle Pitts, or you're going to double Pitts and you're going to put a linebacker on KT.
Yeah.
It's about it's complementary football.
Yeah. So just the final thing, or I guess one more thing. What do you think about the quarterbacks? I thought on the practice I thought they had 2 guys they could probably win with if they had. I don't know how many games they'd win, but I thought they had 2 guys that could play winning football.
I'll be honest.
About what you thought?
I didn't watch any of the quarterbacks.
Okay, so I thought they had, and I'm sure everyone knows the 2 guys that I'm talking about. But I think you have 2 guys that could play winning football. Yeah. Anthony Richardson also did not look like he was very hurt anymore. He looked pretty good.
Yeah, I did see him move around in some of the team periods, and it looked like he was moving okay.
Yeah, so that's a good sign. Last thing, just on the clinic, what did you think about it?
Yeah.
I thought Florida treated. I thought they treated the high school coach really well,
Yeah.
and that was
Start with
something.
the food. The food was A1. Um, what they have? They had like some type of like
They
they had like
some
some type
beef
of red meat
tips,
there that was
yeah,
some beef
chicken,
tips, and then they had
shrimp.
like whoever cooked the mac and cheese. Like I need to figure out
Yeah,
who that was and
get
try to
that
get
now.
that
Yeah,
recipe. And then they had like these green beans that were probably boiled in butter, and yeah.
yeah.
Then they had a little appetizer table over there in the corner that was kind of hiding, and I was all aboard that.
And then they had
And then
the poor hot dog guy over there.
I
They had hot dog
don't
out
know.
just in case, and I don't
Yeah, I
think
don't know
anybody
if you're
took them
gonna
up
get
on
any
it.
action tonight with everybody selling hot
Yeah,
dogs with
but,
everything else going on. But yeah,
yeah.
that was really good. And then they kind of went into the clinic. I can't remember the guy that they opened with.
I think his name was Kevin Eastman. He was he coached with Doc Rivers on the Celtics and
Yeah,
the Clippers, I think. Thought he was
yeah.
pretty good.
I wasn't a huge fan of that one. I don't. It's like it's really hard for you to sell me on like he was saying like the Mbutu thing was the reason that they won that year, and it
It
wasn't
might have
because
been those 3 Hall
I
of
was
Fame
gonna say, and
players.
it wasn't because they went out and signed like Kevin Garnett and
Yeah,
um,
that's helpful.
Rajon Rondo to
Yeah.
play with Paul Pierce and Ray Allen.
He did
But
tell some good Kevin Garnett stories about kind of the
yeah,
maniacal competitor he was. So I
yeah,
thought
yeah,
those were interesting stories.
yeah. But then
Then
they went.
Rule came up and talked.
Yeah,
I thought he was
I
good.
thought, yeah, he was good. And then they kind of went from like the main stage one speaker into like the breakout sessions with their staff. Honestly, I was a little disappointed in that because I was either wanting to go talk with Coach Tony or Coach Raymond, and neither of those guys had a breakout session. But I still had a good time. I went and sat with Coach Bateman for the first part. He's our area recruiter, so I want to go over there and get in touch with him and
Yeah.
just kind of try to establish a relationship there. And then he kind of finished a little earlier, so I went over and I sat with Coach Spencer, defensive line coach. And
How
at
is he?
that
They
point,
say he's really high energy.
yeah, so the first time I went up there, we took a couple of our guys, and one of our guys that they really like is a defensive lineman. So I was kind of hanging out with him, and we were watching defensive line. It seems like he's a really good teacher, high energy. Um, I think he's got a lot of work to do there, especially with the interior defensive line. Like Javon Dexter's like really good. Desmond Watson's hard to move. And then after that, I think there's like young talent, but it's young talent. It's guys that haven't played SEC football yet. I'll tell you a kid that's probably gonna be like an All-American kid is the McClellan kid.
Yeah.
And I would expect him to get reps. I'm just watching him like go through their group periods and their inside run. Like he's hard to move. He plays like he's from Owasso, Oklahoma. Like I know a couple coaches out there that they're really good coaches. So like you see a kid that's supposed to be in high school, he's an early enrollee, and he's already coming in and he's playing with that type of technique. And he's a bigger kid. And like when he was hitting the sled, he was trying to break it.
Yeah.
I mean, he was wearing that sled out. So he's got some power.
He made some plays in some of the team periods too.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. He's a bigger dude, but he's got some power and
he's wearing number 7 too. It looks good in the single digit.
Yeah. So he's a kid that I would watch out for maybe towards the back half of the year that might kind of emerge and get a lot of time. Like I said, I think they're thin there. I would expect like maybe the 2 biggest places that they need to address in the portal is probably they need to go find a slot receiver. They need maybe just another bigger body at defensive tackle. Obviously, tight end room's weird right now.
Yeah.
But they signed 3 freshmen there. So I would think that you would get Odom and Elksness back. I know one was a labrum. That's about a 6-month deal. And the other one was like a collarbone.
They think he's going to be good without surgery, is what I've heard. What I read.
So he'll be fine.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know if you go in the portal there, like, so you're looking at, you might end up having 6 guys on the roster. Like, that's a lot of tight ends.
They play it. They said they're in 12 like 40% of the time is what the tight end
Yeah.
coach said the other day. So
you
they
need
might
4.
Yeah,
You need at
a
least
few.
4.
Yeah. So we'll see if there's going to be some type of movement, I think, on this roster. There's going to be some turnover here after the spring game. Probably a couple of days. By the time you hit Easter, you're going to see some names in the portal, I'd imagine, from Florida. So
yeah, spring game will be over by then. I would probably agree with that. One kid, it just popped in my head. We didn't get to talk about the offensive tackle transfer from Louisville.
Or Louisiana,
like
the Waits kid.
Giant.
Yeah.
Specimen.
Yeah. They look. I thought. I definitely. What do you think about how much did you get to watch the offensive line? Did you see?
I watched the offensive line every day when I walked in. The first 30 minutes I would spend watching the offensive line.
What do you think of the 2-coach setup?
This is actually something that I kind of wanted to talk about. To me, the 2 most important position groups in football is offensive line and defensive back. I just think if you're bad at one of those, like, that's the quickest way to lose football games, is to be really bad up front on offense or be really bad in the back end on defense.
Yeah.
And they've got 2 guys coaching both of those positions. Yeah. And it's not like Sale is coaching the tackles and Stapleton's coaching the interior guys. It's more like it's like 2 sets of eyes. They'll break them up into groups, and then they'll so maybe he's working with the first group and the other guy's working with the second group, or maybe he's working with the left side and then they switch. So
yeah, that was interesting. It was not. Florida previously had 2 O-line, and there would be the tackles and tight ends coach and then the interior coach. It did not seem to be split like that. So that was interesting. From what I've heard, those guys get together. Basically, it is like a 2 sets of eyes things. They'll kind of coach, and then after practice, they'll come and talk and be like, "Hey, this is what I saw. This is what I saw." So it's definitely they're definitely putting a premium there.
Yeah, I think there's 7 or 8 guys in that room that are like really good football players. I would think that's going to be one of the stronger position groups on the roster this year. I mean, we were at Florida State and I coached Jake Slaughter at Trinity, and I think Jake has been kind of rotating as a third center or second guard. And I was like, there's no doubt in my mind that Jake would be starting over here right now. Yeah. I think there's good talent there, and honestly, I think there's some good depth, and they're getting a lot of reps, and they're bigger guys.
Those two guys that transferred from Louisiana are not small dudes. Torrance is another big guy too. They were both big guys, and they were repping together. So I'll be interested to see kind of how that.
I'll tell you, I'm a big fan of. I like the center.
Was it Kingsley?
Yeah, I don't know how to say his last name. Ekugon.
Yeah, something like
that. And I like the left guard, the kid that when he came
Ethan White.
Yeah, I think both of those guys are they're like alphas.
Kingsley was I saw offense went and scored. He was calling out the defense.
Yeah,
kind of getting them fired up.
I think they seemed like they were really getting after it, and they were kind of leading, and they were like super vocal, competitive. I think that's what you like. To me, offensive line is it's like 2 things. It's like run off the ball and finish, and I think it's all attitude. So I like seeing guys that are kind of like pricks that play offensive line. I mean, you got to want to run through people.
Yeah,
I think it's a mindset. So I like seeing a little attitude there on the offensive line.
Yeah. I think they definitely had some of that, so that was good to see. All right, Riley, I've kept you for a while now. I appreciate you coming on and talking about what you saw at practice. Any predictions for the spring game?
Predictions for the spring game. Gators will – this is always hard. It's like you're going to say the Gators will win. Will they not lose? Because one team's got – tie? Are we going tie?
Have you – here, my last thing. Have you seen how they're doing the spring game?
No.
So what I read is that they're breaking them up this week into the two
Uh-huh.
teams and practicing separately.
Really?
They're going to come out of different tunnels,
I kind of like that.
and they're going to treat it like almost like a real game. So that'll
I
be
kind of
really
like that, like a little rivalry.
yeah. So that'll be.
I want to see like maybe we'll get like a midfield skirmish like pregame. Yeah,
that's when you know we've arrived.
Jumping on the logo.
There you go.
I'd be fired up to see that.
All right. Well, so I'll be back next week with the kind of a breakdown of the spring game. So if you're watching this, you want to see that, come back, and I'll bring Riley back. I'm sure sometime before the season or definitely during this season. Yeah. So you'll see Riley again. Riley, good luck in a couple of weeks starting up spring ball. You guys got any fundraising things going on in Union County or anything like that?
Not right now. Just kind of going through it. We normally do one in the summer.
There you go. Follow
We've
Riley.
got a great community that takes care of us. They do a good job. So,
well, if you want to throw Riley a couple tips or something, follow Riley Reed UF on Twitter.
Appreciate it.
Get a donation for all this great work he's doing for you guys. Thanks for coming on, Riley. Appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.